Danny, we need to talk about us. I think we should try to work things out. Rachel stood in our kitchen doorway, nervously fidgeting with her wedding ring after weeks of barely speaking to me. For 3 weeks, she'd avoided eye contact, stayed late at work, and slept in the guest room. Now suddenly she wanted to fix our marriage? I looked up from my laptop and said calmly, "I think that's a great idea." What Rachel didn't know was that I'd been gathering evidence for weeks, and her sudden change of heart was about to backfire spectacularly. My name is Daniel Winters. I'm 41 years old and I work as a data analyst for a cybersecurity firm in Seattle. My job involves finding patterns in digital behavior, identifying anomalies, and uncovering hidden connections. Skills that turned out to be more useful in my personal life than I'd ever imagined. Rachel's behavioral change had started gradually in early October. The late nights at work became a pattern, each excuse carefully crafted but never quite adding up. Weekend plans dissolved into last-minute client emergencies. Phone conversations moved from our bedroom to the backyard, voices hushed behind closed doors. The most telling sign was the digital distance. Text conversations that once flowed naturally throughout the day simply stopped. Our shared streaming accounts showed activity during hours when she claimed to be in back-to-back meetings. Location sharing, once automatic between us, suddenly required battery preservation. As a data analyst, I recognized what was happening. Someone was compartmentalizing their digital life, creating boundaries where none had existed before. In my professional world, this behavior typically indicated unauthorized system access. In my personal world, it suggested something far more concerning. So I began documenting everything methodically. The evidence accumulated with disturbing consistency. Tuesday evening claims of working late didn't match the empty parking space at her office building. Friday client dinners appeared on social media as solo wine tastings across town. Credit card statements revealed a pattern of purchases at unfamiliar locations, charges for services never mentioned at home. 3 weeks into this new reality, Rachel's avoidance strategy intensified. Morning departures happened before dawn. Evening returns occurred well past midnight. The guest room became her permanent residence, snoring complaints serving as justification for the separation. Our home transformed into a boarding house, where two strangers happened to share the same address. That's when I made a decision that would have seemed impossible 6 months earlier. Professional help was necessary. Griffin Cole operated a discreet investigation service, specializing in matrimonial verification. His former law enforcement background showed in the systematic way he approached our initial consultation, reviewing my documentation with the detached professionalism of someone who'd seen this pattern countless times before. The surveillance would start immediately, minimum engagement parameters established, costs outlined with clinical precision. The first report arrived 3 days later through encrypted channels. Griffin had tracked Rachel to 3 distinct locations: an upscale fitness facility she'd never mentioned, a coffee shop where she spent over an hour with another person, and a restaurant where intimate dinner conversation suggested far more than professional relationship. The other person was male, estimated age 35 to 40, driving a late-model gray BMW. The interactions Griffin observed and photographed confirmed what my analytical mind had already concluded, but my heart had hoped wasn't true. Rachel was having an affair. The man's face seemed familiar as I studied the surveillance images. Recognition came slowly, then all at once. Kevin Torres, someone she'd mentioned in passing as a challenging client from her marketing firm, a construction company owner requiring specialized promotional strategies. Griffin's background research revealed Kevin Torres is 38 years old, recently divorced, operating a moderately successful construction business. Rachel had been meeting him regularly for 6 weeks, always during periods she'd claimed to be handling urgent work responsibilities. I spent the weekend processing this information, feeling simultaneously vindicated and hollow. 12 years of marriage reduced to timestamps and photographic evidence. Monday morning brought Rachel downstairs earlier than usual, already dressed for work but lingering in the kitchen as if something needed to be said. "Danny, we need to talk." I looked up from my laptop where Griffin's latest report filled the screen with documentation that would end our marriage. "I'm listening." Rachel sat across from me, her nervous energy filling the space between us. She spoke about work stress, about taking things out on me, about wanting to try counseling or take a weekend trip somewhere. The irony was almost amusing. Rachel was using her affair partner as an excuse for the behavioral changes caused by their relationship. I studied Rachel's face as she spoke, noting the calculated pauses, the forced eye contact, the careful word selection. This wasn't a woman who suddenly wanted to fix our marriage. This was someone who needed to control a narrative that was spinning beyond her management. "What changed?" I asked. The question caught her off guard. 3 weeks of barely speaking, now sudden interest in romantic getaways. Her explanation about realizing she'd been unfair came with nervous fidgeting and eyes that wouldn't quite meet mine. "Yesterday." Griffin's most recent report had mentioned Kevin Torres being photographed with another woman at a restaurant across town, someone who clearly wasn't Rachel. The timeline was becoming clear. Rachel's sudden interest in reconciliation coincided perfectly with her affair partner's apparent interest in someone else. "I think counseling is a great idea," I said. Rachel's relief was visible, tension flowing out of her shoulders like water through a drain. "But first, I think we should be completely honest with each other." Her smile froze in place. "What do you mean? So is there anything you want to tell me about the past few weeks?" "Just that I'm sorry for being distant. Work has been overwhelming." "Anything else?" "Like what?" "Like Kevin Torres?" The color drained from Rachel's face as if someone had pulled a plug. If watching cheating spouses realize their secret affairs have been exposed makes your heart race, hit subscribe. Because Rachel's about to learn that some people are much better at gathering evidence than hiding affairs. The silence stretched between us for nearly a minute. Rachel's nervous fidgeting stopped entirely. She sat perfectly still, processing what my question implied about how much I actually knew. "What about Kevin?" she finally asked. "You tell me. He's a client. You know that. I know he's more than a client." Her breathing became shallow. The careful explanations began tumbling out, denials mixed with justifications. But I cut through them all with precision. "I know you've been meeting him. I know you've been lying about working late. I know your sudden interest in marriage counseling started yesterday, the same day he was seen with someone else." Rachel stared at me, her face cycling through confusion, denial, and dawning realization. "You had me followed." "I hired a professional to verify what I already suspected." The conversation that followed revealed everything I'd expected. Rachel's shock at being caught, her attempts to minimize the affair, her claims about our marriage problems justifying her choices. When she tried to leave, I mentioned the photos. I opened my laptop and turned the screen toward her. Griffin's report included time-stamped images of Rachel and Kevin at 3 different locations, clearly showing intimate behavior that couldn't be explained as professional meetings. Rachel looked at the photos for a long moment, her face cycling through various emotions before settling into resignation. She sat back down heavily. "How long have you known?" "I've suspected for 3 weeks. I've had confirmation for 1 week." The truth came out in fragments. The affair wasn't supposed to happen. Kevin understood her career in ways I never did. She'd made a mistake, multiple mistakes over 6 weeks. "What happens now?" she asked. I gave her clear terms. "End all contact with Kevin Torres immediately. Request reassignment from his account at work. Complete transparency about schedule and activities. Marriage counseling starting next week." Rachel agreed to my terms, but I could see uncertainty in her expression. She wasn't agreeing because she wanted to save our marriage. She was agreeing because her affair had fallen apart and she needed time to plan her next move. Over the following week, Rachel performed her role perfectly. She requested reassignment from Kevin's account, citing scheduling conflicts. She came home directly after work each day, arriving at predictable times. She volunteered information about her activities without being asked. But something felt performative about her efforts, like watching someone play a role rather than genuinely working to rebuild our relationship. The truth became clear during our first marriage counseling session. Dr. Helena Brennan operated a practice specializing in trust issues and infidelity recovery. Her office was designed to facilitate difficult conversations, comfortable but neutral enough not to favor either party. The session began with explanations. I outlined the affair, the behavioral changes, and my decision to hire a private investigator. Rachel described feeling neglected in our marriage and making poor choices as a result. When Dr. Brennan asked about Rachel's commitment to rebuilding trust, Rachel spoke about wanting to save our marriage, about 12 years together counting for something. I appreciate that she's followed through on ending the affair and being more transparent, I said when asked about Rachel's efforts. But I'm not convinced she's here because she wants to save our marriage. What makes you say that? I think she's here because her affair ended badly and she needs time to figure out her next move. Rachel's facade cracked slightly. She insisted she was there because she loved me and wanted to work things out. But do you, I asked, love me? Rachel hesitated just long enough to confirm what I'd suspected all along. Of course I love you. Then why did you only want to work things out after Kevin moved on to someone else? Dr. Brennan attempted to redirect the conversation, but the damage was done. Rachel's hesitation had revealed that her sudden interest in marriage counseling wasn't motivated by love or commitment. It was motivated by convenience and timing. That night, I made a decision that would have seemed impossible 3 months earlier. I called Griffin and asked him to resume surveillance of Rachel's activities. Griffin's first report after resuming surveillance confirmed what my analytical mind had already concluded. Rachel had contacted Kevin Torres through a messaging application not monitored by her employer. They'd met for coffee twice during lunch breaks over the past week. The affair hadn't ended, just become more careful and strategic. More concerning was Rachel's other activity. She had been visiting law offices, consulting with divorce attorneys while publicly committing to saving our marriage. Rachel wasn't trying to save our marriage. She was trying to control how it ended. Armed with this information, I made my own appointment with a divorce attorney. Patricia Walsh reviewed Griffin's reports and confirmed I was in a strong position to protect my assets and avoid paying alimony, given Rachel's documented deception and continued affair. 3 weeks later, Rachel made her final and most critical mistake. During our third marriage counseling session, Dr. Brennan asked about progress with trust-building exercises. Rachel spoke confidently about making real progress, about being completely transparent about her activities. Daniel, how do you see the progress? I think Rachel's been working hard to rebuild trust, I said calmly. In fact, I have something for her. I handed Rachel a manila envelope. She opened it to find time-stamped surveillance photos of her recent meetings with Kevin Torres, along with documentation of her visits to divorce attorneys. Dr. Brennan looked visibly uncomfortable as Rachel stared at the evidence of her continued deception. Danny, what is this? This is proof that you've been lying about ending the affair and planning to divorce me while pretending to work on our marriage. You had me followed again? I never stopped having you followed. Rachel turned to Dr. Brennan, but the therapist looked like she'd rather be handling any other situation. This marriage is over, Rachel said, throwing the photos back into the envelope. Yes, it is. The divorce proceedings that followed were swift and decisive. Rachel's continued affair and her documented deception during marriage counseling undermined any claims about wanting to reconcile. Her secret consultations with divorce attorneys while publicly committing to saving our marriage demonstrated calculated manipulation rather than genuine remorse. Patricia Walsh used the evidence effectively to protect my assets and avoid alimony obligations. Rachel received her personal belongings and half of our marital assets, but nothing more. 6 months after Rachel had first avoided eye contact in our kitchen, the divorce was finalized. She married Kevin Torres 2 months later, though mutual acquaintances mentioned their relationship remained troubled and unstable. The most satisfying part wasn't the favorable divorce settlement or watching Rachel's manipulation fail. It was the realization that my professional skills, pattern recognition, evidence gathering, methodical analysis, had protected me from being victimized by someone who thought I was naive enough to believe her performance. Rachel had tried to control the narrative of our marriage's end by pretending to want reconciliation while secretly planning her exit strategy. Instead, she'd provided me with the evidence I needed to end the marriage on my terms rather than hers. A year later, I was dating Jennifer, a fellow data analyst who appreciated directness over manipulation. When I told her about Rachel's elaborate deception, Jennifer's response was characteristic of her straightforward personality. She tried to gaslight a data analyst? That's like trying to hack a cybersecurity expert. Jennifer was right. Rachel had chosen the wrong target for her manipulation campaign. Someone whose job involved detecting deception and gathering evidence wasn't likely to be fooled by sudden behavioral changes and convenient explanations. Sometimes the best response to someone trying to deceive you isn't confrontation or emotion. Sometimes it's just quietly gathering proof of what you already know to be true.